The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everybody, thank you very much for attending our webinar today. I'm going to give everybody a couple of minutes just as we're nearing 2 o'clock. I will just go on mute for a minute and we will start the broadcast just after 2 o'clock. I look forward to presenting to you. Hello everybody, it's Gemma Bridgman here from Equilibrium Security. Just going to give people just a minute or so just to dial in. I think people are having a few challenges. Don't you just love technology, hey? But we will be starting the webinar in a couple of minutes' time. Hello everybody, we're going to get the webinar started now. I'm conscious of people's diaries and times. So as I said, I'm Gemma Bridgman. I'm the director at Equilibrium Security. And today you are joining both myself and Max from Tripwire. We are going to be presenting a webinar on fundamentals in industrial control systems and security. Don't worry, it will all become clear later on in the session. So here's a brief agenda of what we're going to cover off. So as I said, I'll introduce myself. So I've been a director at Equilibrium now for 5 years, and I'll give you a bit of background about who we are as a business and also about Tripwire. I won't steal Max's thunder. I'll let him tell you a bit about himself. We will be covering off some of the challenges that I'm sure all of you are facing within the industry at the moment. Don't worry if your business isn't within oil and gas. These are challenges that relate to businesses throughout the world, you know, with what cyber is bringing at the moment. We'll give you an insightful guide into what we feel is the best tactic, we'll say, about how you can stay on top of cybersecurity and some good strategy to have to that. We're going to cover off a bit about the NIST directive. This is something that is impacting a number of people that are attending the webinar today. So we'll give you a bit of an overview and a flavour of what we feel that is. The key, you know, we've got Tripwire. They're going to do a fantastic demo later on and going to demonstrate how their tool can help you not only achieve what we see as, you know, a key part of the cybersecurity strategy, will also relay how that can help you stay compliant with the NIST directive as well. We're going to tell you, you know, kind of some next steps. There's some great things that you're going to get to be able to see some reports and things for attending this webinar. So I encourage you all to stay on. If you have got any questions throughout the presentation, then please put them in the questions box within the side panel to the right, and I will cover them off at the end. So I encourage you, ask questions, you know, be interactive, and we'll get back to them at the end. Also worth saying, this is recorded and on demand, so if you do need to, you know, drop off for whatever reason, we will share this with you after the session. So who are we? Thank you all for attending if you didn't know who we were, but we are cybersecurity experts. We're headquartered in Birmingham. We're incorporated in 2012, and we've recently opened a base up in Edinburgh as well. So we've got a Scottish team up there. Cybersecurity is all that we do. We're specialists in it. We've got over 20 years industry experience, and we tailor best of breed security solutions to suit our customers' needs. And within that, we partner with who we see as best of breed vendors. So that takes us on to Tripwire. Now, the reason we partner with Tripwire is we feel that the tools and attributes of what they offer is fantastic and second to none. They really do help with reducing the risk of cyber attacks. It gives you the ability to achieve compliance. Mentioned the NIST directive on the top, but it's tools that can be used to really enable you to stay on top of things and ahead of the game. It's really about being able to do real-time response and being able to kind of identify and protect against future intrusions before they impact your organization. So as I mentioned, cyber challenges, we've put them really to the oil and gas industry. However, these are things that are impacting many businesses today. I don't think it will be any surprise to you that the most common cause of a breach is human error. Malicious attacks can easily spread by clicking on a phishing link. And I don't know about you, but I seem to be seeing more and more very sophisticated email phishing attacks at the moment, stuff through text messages and things. It's that, they're quite creative, are these hackers now. Also, kind of inserting a rogue memory stick and things into corporate devices. I don't know if you have a lot of contractors that come onto site or people that, and staff that are there on a temporary basis, but unless those systems are locked down, it's very difficult to kind of know who's accessing what and where and things, and trying to kind of keep on top of things is quite, scary. There was a recent study into this by EY, and they found that 78% consider a careless member of staff are the most likely source of an attack. Now, that's not necessarily because you've got awful people that work for your business. It's because we all have busy lives. We all kind of, wouldn't intentionally do it, but it's very easy to do something by accident, and the repercussions can be pretty catastrophic when it comes to cyber. Now, I'm sure this is something that all of you can relate to, having a patchwork of technology. The rapid digital evolution has happened, so quickly over the last few years. And I think what we're finding is we've got a kind of dangerous patchwork of old and new technology. Unfortunately, because legacy systems haven't been able to catch up, they're kind of built, we'll say, in a previous technological era, but they're simply not designed to be resilient against cyber threats. And I'm sure there are many systems that you've got within the businesses that you work for that clearly haven't been updated, and that's not necessarily your fault. That's because the manufacturers of those tools haven't updated them. Lack of visibility and blind spots. I mean, this for me is a real big one. Having a myriad of old and new devices and machines that are not interconnected leads to kind of that blind spot, lack of visibility into cyber threats, and kind of what can get where, which is always a challenge. Vulnerabilities within systems. When firms have outdated digital infrastructure and it's in need of repair, this can lead to kind of dangerous vulnerabilities which can be exploited by hackers. Within this industry, the risk is far greater than a fine from the ICO. You guys are running some critical infrastructure, and you just can't take the risk of that being impacted, because it costs money, but also there's that critical infrastructure that you are kind of running. So I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown. I'm sure these are names that you've heard of, but I just give you just a bit of a couple, here. So Petrofac, that was malware that was infected their systems actually in the Middle East, but it spread to servers in Saudi, the UAE, Kuwait, and Scotland. Who'd have thought? But the systems were actually shut down. So this was a cyber attack that was back in 2018. Another Scottish firm to kind of mention was Enemec. Now, they kept their kind of malware variant under wraps and things like that. But what they kind of have said, and officials have said, that the malware was a file encrypting software which hit its offices, and that was located in more than 40 locations around the world, which is, I'm sure you can relate to, that would be pretty catastrophic if it hit any of your businesses. So, a guide to a full cyber strategy. What does this mean? Is this a utopia? How do you kind of relate to it? And by no means are we saying that we can prevent all cyber attacks. Wouldn't it be fantastic if we were in that position? But what we feel is that if people take kind of advanced controls, which enable you to be able to firstly protect, detect, respond, and recover from cyber attacks, it's going to put you so much further ahead to quick remediation and that kind of thing. I really feel that to protect your data and the business, kind of critical machines that you're kind of working with, it's important to have layers of security defenses and follow a real stringent process, to reduce that attack surface. This can be done in a few ways. Firstly, deploy security solutions in line with best practice. Seek support from experienced security consultants like ourselves. Deploy solutions designed specifically for your unique business needs. There are lots of tools out there. There are lots of people saying they can keep you secure, but ultimately these need to be in line with what you're doing as a business, and kind of sewing that all up. And kind of lead with security when you are installing and refreshing new technologies which are internet facing. I think so much so we've run ahead with the technology and digital evolution that we've kind of forgotten a little bit about security, and we really need to kind of look at that and onboard it as we're moving forward. And we feel that doing that, it's really going to give you the right insight and information to enable a business to respond and recover so much quicker if you heaven forbid did have a cyber breach. So this slide really is here to highlight the attack vector, and that all of these areas need to be protected and joined up to ensure there's no gaps. The number one attack vector, yes, we've mentioned human error, but it's also the email and where the kind of phishing attacks kind of come from. And we feel that this needs to be looked at from a holistic point of view, linked together and really looked at, so that then it ensures that you're ahead of the game, and that you're kind of in control of your security strategy. Cyber attacks tend to be multi-stage, coordinated and blended, which is why it is important to have these layers of cyber security defences. As I'm sure many of you can relate to, you do operate highly complex infrastructures. So you need to take that kind of full ownership of cybersecurity to ensure that each potential entry point is protected by security controls and processes. So we feel that this approach will help you to be able to move forward. Now, by doing this, identifying where the security threats are, vulnerabilities, particularly in systems and legacy systems that we've mentioned, weaknesses in security tools, and kind of being able to identify those areas, and also data anomalies, I can't say that word, I do apologize, in infrastructure. So we really need to look at those kind of key areas, and by doing that identification piece, which I won't steal Max's thunder, but he'll be able to kind of cover that piece off of how Tripwire will help you to do that. It will enable you to protect all of those areas that I mentioned previously on the kind of holistic piece, but your endpoints, your critical systems, your cloud, data, and ultimately your network. So I'm going to take you on to the NIST directive. Don't worry, I'm not going to do war and peace on this, but just a bit of a high level of what it is. The NIST directive was enforced and started really in May 2008, and it's supported by the National Cybersecurity Centre. It's a regulation that provides the legal footings to ensure that UK firms can effectively manage and contain cybersecurity breaches, have a cybersecurity incident response team, and national NIS competent authority. Now, what does all that mean? It does sound a bit jargony, doesn't it? But I think ultimately there are many facets to it, and there's different ways that you can kind of interpret the directive. However, I want to kind of cover off before the demo what I feel, from our stance, what the NIST directive is, and the steps that you can kind of take. So we feel that the NIST directive helps firms to create dynamic and detailed security risk assessments, which are constantly updated to reflect new threats and network changes. It helps you to validate the effectiveness of security controls and to ensure that networks and information systems remain cyber resilient. In addition to this, it helps to identify, assess, understand, and prioritize security risks which threaten the security of business critical systems and internal networks. It really enables an organisation to have an approach to risk assessment which focuses on the possibility of disruption to your essential services. And this will really help to understand how a cyber attack may occur and what the associated risks are for your technology ecosystem. Now, I'm going to hand over to Max, and I'm going to let him show you how Tripwire will help you to be compliant with the NIST directive. So bear with me 2 seconds. I've just got to hand over the ball. Over to you, Max.
Sorry. Can you see the presentation?
We can see the presentation, yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So, short to me, I'm Max Skilled. I'm cybersecurity at the moment, more than 10 years background in cybersecurity. And before that, around 5 years of background in industrial environments at an energy service provider. And I take you to how does Tripwire fit into the NIST directive and the cybersecurity strategy. And the first thing I want to come back to that slide because that's covering the full strategy. And the first part that we are matched into is more the strategy cycle. And how does Tripwire match into that? Because we heard prevention and protection starts with visibility and protection mechanism. And how we match into that? We have a passive solution that is collecting all network traffic and brings you good insights about your network and about your complete environment. With that insight, we can help you to find the best places for segmentation firewalls. We get complete insight how the rule sets on that firewall should look like, and you get a good insight about each behavior and all vulnerabilities that are present in your network, and then with that information you can plan your protection. If it comes to detection, we are seeing the complete network traffic. That means we can create a baseline out of the complete behavior. That baseline, if that baseline is approved and is set to the basics, we can alert everything what is not normal. I would say that's a little bit critical if it comes to an IT environment, but in OT, you have complete reliable processes that brings you that opportunity to think in whitelists and say, alert everything what is not normal. To that alerting mechanism, we add context. For example, we have an IDS system that is adding context, for example, for known malware or known malicious behavior. Or we can add syslog as data and other information to get your context. Maybe a baseline deviation is the cause of baseline deviation is a broken cable or a new device that is connected to the network. And that's something we can alert and give you the context, for example, on what switch port the new device is connected, or what switch port went down, or other things we can find out doing syslog. In containment and response, we are having a product or a solution that is consuming each logs, SNMP values, and each meter information. And because of that, we are able to do an automation and correlation about that information, and can send response out to everyone and to each other system. That brings you the capability to inform the right persons about cybersecurity threats or other threats. For example, if you have some malware on an operator PC, maybe that's just interesting for the security team. But if you find, for example, some malicious behavior in the safety system that is protecting humans from a robot or something like that, it could be interesting to inform the persons in front of the machine. And sometimes it's even interesting just to forward something to SIM or send mails out. And that's something we can provide here. If it comes to remediation, we can highlight assets for remediation, and we can add some context if you get going back to backup. For example, if a cyber attack is in your network for more than 200 days and you have to go back to a late backup, we can highlight each change that is done from the backup you have to choose till today, and because of that, you can configure everything what was not malicious afterwards, or find a better backup and just delete out malicious part, but you're able to identify that malicious changes. And the last point, if it comes to improve and optimization, we can measure your complete cybersecurity compliance, and can measure your environment against the NIST directive. And because of that, we can see the improvements of your compliance state and can help you to get more secure over time. And now I dive into a demo that is covering each of that parts. Let's start with identification, identify, and protection. First of all, that's our product called Tripwire Industrial Visibility, and that product is the passive solution that is discovering your network or consuming your network traffic and gives you insights what is happening in your network. Just have in mind that that solution is passive. That means maybe name resolution is not done because there was no name resolution seen in the network traffic. In that case, there are just IP addresses, sometimes names, sometimes IP addresses, depends if there is a DNS request seen in the network traffic. And if it comes to that, starting with the asset view, that means, first of all, we are documenting a full list of each asset that is in your network. And we are creating a graph how that assets are communicating to each other and can show it in that easy way. Let's deep dive into one of that systems that you can see what other information we can get out of that. That's, for example, the Rockwell PLC, and because it's programmed over the network, we see exactly each software version, the serial numbers, and the versions of each line cards. That brings us the information of vulnerabilities, because we know the vendor, the software version, what is in the network, and because of that, we can go to the database from the vendor and highlight known vulnerabilities of that devices that you can manage in that product. And maybe you can approve it, or you can try to get an update or trigger whatever you want. Here you can see the baseline I talked before. That means we are discovering each communication and set around that a rule set. That rule set is looking like that. You see unconnected message sent to card 1, address 12, card this, and we see the interval and the count of the devices, and code of that we can create a baseline. And if it's not happening like that, we can alert it. Now let's go back and look into the segmentation feature. Here we see some zones I defined myself. So that means you can define a zone for each device in your network. And I separated endpoints. That's just endpoints with external addresses. That's endpoints with internal addresses. And now if you want, maybe you want to place a firewall between internal endpoints and external endpoints, you can go into that system and get the complete network traffic that was seen on the mirror port between that two zones. And that's all information you need to create your first simple rule set without any interruption in your production environment. As last point here, I want to show you two things. First, we can generate a report out of that can be shown or can be generated once a week or once a month to give you the whole insight of your network and finding everything what is changed or what is connected to your network with a deep dive information, including all vulnerabilities and all connections of your network. And you can filter that up front, that it's a smaller piece of information. So I think that's good for prevention. Let's go to the next point, detection. The first thing you see here is alerts. Alerts means we detect everything what is not in the baseline. And that's done by getting into a training mode, let the program run, and if everything is documented, you switch over to some productive mode, and in that productive mode, every change to the baseline will be alerted. That, for example, looks like that. Out of working hours configuration uploaded, and then you can dive into that alert, and that's no malware, but that's something what was not documented, and so you can get an alert and can trigger events out of that. And here you can see, for example, critical events, security events, because that's known threats. We know here there is a device what is have WannaCry on it, and we detected it because of a malicious DNS request that is matched to WannaCry. The next point of detection and response, I want to introduce you to our log correlation and response tool. What we can add to the messages is, for example, log events we can correlate log events, baseline utilizations from any device that can syslog. That could be a PLC, that could be a HMI, that could be a Windows SCADA system, that could be a Linux SCADA system, that could be everything in your environment that can add context to that messages. But I want to demonstrate the correlation part just once. That's the reason why I first dive into response actions, how we can respond on something, and how that could work. Let's see here, we have here a rule that is normalizing or that is collecting data from Tripwire industrial visibility, and that's critical threats. Critical threat means everything what is detected from the IDS system. Could be network support, here could be malware. And now you see anything is collected. If we think about that, who should be informed about that? Maybe we want to inform the SIM solution from the IT department. That's simple. And now if you want to send, for example, a mail, you can do it like that. Just know that actions are defined by you, but that's really simple to define it. But now, could be more interesting. If you say, if that critical thread is really, you can say source IP address, source IP address. If you know the PLC or the safety related system, you can say trigger additional action if it's safety related. And if it's safety related, I want to send an MQTT message to another safety related system. That is enabling, for example, a red light. So if you think about a production environment in oil and gas, maybe there's a scheduled maintenance and you're not in a risk place, in a high risk place, and if the safety system in the high risk place during the maintenance hours is infected, maybe it's better to leave that place and go there later on if everything is safe. And now, if you see a critical threat, that's the other way. If you want to add, for example, other log sources, you can say if there is a switch port up before that critical threat, you want to add that switch port up information to your mail to the IT system. You can simply add here the interface inbound interface information to the message name. That means you get the event name from the critical threat and the inbound information from the switch port up. If it's in the same, if it's matched by, for example, source IP address or MAC address, and there is a longer list to do that. Okay, I hope that shows the capability how we respond to actions. And I think the highlighting part is clear at the moment as well. If it comes to recover, you see that we highlight exactly the infected device with that IP address. And the next point, what I want to point out is with our product Tripwire Enterprise Console, what is the integrity monitoring and compliance tool, we can help you if you have a cybersecurity incident and you want to recover everything. That helps you to find out how far I have to go back that I don't have the malware in the backup, and what is changed during that time. Of course, with Tripwire Enterprise, you get a good idea what is changed in your network, because that's every change seen on, for example, that device. Each file is documented, and it's, if you go on the change, it's completely everything in it, even if it's just a configuration. And now if you know you have to go back for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, I can say play in a backup between that two changes. Then I know exactly each change, what has happened in that backup phase, and then I can sort out what I want to change and what not. So coming to the last point, that is measuring and improvements. Tripwire Enterprise has the capability to measure your security, and that's done with an agent on each Windows or Linux device, or agentless with each network device, or even Windows or Linux devices, but that's more heavy in performance. And with that check, we can check against each compliance guideline. For example, ISO 27001, NIST directive, and other compliance guidelines that are out in the market. And now, first, let you see what we can see here. Of course, we are separating the compliance or the NIST directive into different parts. For example, here AA asset management, access control, and everything what is related to that, and it's measured by that operating system. And now let's go into the failed checks, and here you can see exactly how we are getting out of that. Here you see what part of the compliance guideline is not right. The first thing you see is how to remediate, and that is a complete guidance how you can configure that. In that case, we have machine inactivity limit 900 or fewer seconds. That's part of the compliance guideline. And here you see how to change that inactivity limit. And here you see how we found out that it's not right. And just for your information, that information can be part of an automated generated ticket with an integration into other ticket systems, for example, ServiceNow, and you can track that changes afterwards in your change management system. And as last point, I want to show you here that we can trigger that, or we can track that over time as well. That means if something gets better, you see on the line chart that it's get better. If we are changing the rule set, because the rule set is changing by the government or by the compliance provider, we can display that here as well, that your security gets down a little bit, and you can measure the improvement afterwards. And Gemma, I think that's it from my side.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Max. That was really, really insightful. Would you be able to pass the presenter back to myself?
Yes.
Apologies about this, guys. Just passing that around. Fantastic. So I think you should be able to see my screen now. So hopefully that was really insightful for you all, and gave you some good ideas about how the tools can be used to help you to protect, detect, respond, and recover from a cyber breach. So I just wanted to kind of wrap up from there, just to kind of give you a bit of an overview about where we fit in and how we can kind of support you in that journey to having that cybersecurity I suppose, strategy in place. So we work with many organisations from both large and small, and across the globe. But what we do is we help people to protect their data. Now we kind of put that into three facets. That can be by working with you to kind of put together a strategy that we've talked about, and look at what tools you need in place, what policies potentially, and what things really need to be designed. And that can be advising you around the NIST directive, around different kind of policies that you need to look at. We can also help you to kind of design and implement those solutions. Clearly, we've got Tripwire on the webinar today, which is fantastic. We do partner with many other best of breed technologies that feed and sit really nicely with the Tripwire solution. So if you do want to reach out to me afterwards, my details will be distributed, but also find me on LinkedIn as well. And managed security services. I know Max did a fantastic demo there, of what this solution is all about. But you might find, my goodness, I am completely overwhelmed by that. We haven't got the security expertise in house. We really need, I'll say a hand holding, by a cybersecurity expert, and we do that, with businesses. Some businesses we deliver that full service. Others we deliver the kind of, we fit into their security teams. We can kind of work alongside there. So why should you work with us? I hopefully, reassure you that we are a safe pair of hands, that are security experts, and we are the team that are implementing, designing, and managing these solutions for many blue chip organizations. There you go. So I'm just going to be rounding up the webinar now. So let's have a look, and yeah, should be able to buy you back a little bit of your precious time. So thank you so much for all attending. Because you have attended this webinar, you're going to be able to claim your free risk assessment report. So it's completely independent and a remote service. No direct access is required into your environment. We'll request a few things to be fed through kind of into the Tripwire visibility solution. We'll put together a resulting report, and we can I can provide you an example of what that report will kind of look like. If that is something that you are interested in, Craig, one of my colleagues, will be reaching out to you just to kind of get that set up. Also, there might be, if you have liked what you've seen today with the Tripwire portfolio, the could be a proof of concept available if that is something that would be beneficial to you. There's the NIST directive mapping document we will share with you again after this webinar. Please do encourage you to visit our website. We're always putting blogs and different information out there, and it's probably the font of all knowledge with new things that are happening within the industry and things like that. Details, so if you do want to give me a call, there's my details, and probably best to contact my colleague Zoe if you want any further kind of information after this. Now, kindly, people have been putting questions in as we've been kind of going through the presentation, which has been really useful. So bear with me 2 seconds. Let me just have a look at what we've got. So first question in is, can Tripwire offer automated compliance for other frameworks like ISO 27001? Because obviously today we've mentioned the NIST directive. Well, the answer is yes, which is hopefully good to know. With the Tripwire Enterprise, organizations can quickly achieve IT configuration integrity by proactively assessing how your current configurations measure up to specifications as given in the ISO 27001. So yeah, for non-compliant configurations, it will raise it and it'll report on that, and it'll give you that, kind of on an ongoing basis, so you'll always know where you are in that compliance reg, which I always think is quite useful, rather than doing a one-off pen test and then you're only as compliant as the last test and that kind of thing. So it just makes sure that you're maintaining that compliance on an ongoing basis. So hopefully that answers your question. Right, next one. Can this be delivered as a service, as we haven't got the time to do this in-house? I think, I've probably covered that off just a little bit, but we are a Tripwire, gold partner. We have got the expertise to be able to manage this, optimize it, work with you to make sure that this is tailored as a solution for you. So absolutely, don't worry. You don't have to know about this. We can just deliver a nice output report and give you the reassurance of what you're looking for. So yeah, don't worry about that. We can do kind of tailored policy creations, making sure that the process and performance is optimized. So absolutely, we can do that for you. So hopefully that answers that question. So okay, we've just had one more in. So how can Tripwire help to monitor and quickly respond in the event of a cyber breach? I think Max did kind of look at that previously, but just to kind of summarize on that during a cyber breach investigation, it is invaluable, I must say, to be able to kind of quickly determine how a host has changed in a given time period. And with the enterprise Tripwire solution, it does monitor assets for changes and can provide kind of key data about what an attacker may have done whilst kind of present and on the infrastructure at the time. So this visibility really does allow you to assess the potential damage of where they've got, what they've done, and it enables you to have that kind of insight to respond quickly and effectively. So hopefully that answers that question for you. So those were ones that came in whilst I was talking earlier, so I took note. Let's just have a look if we've got any more there. So okay, so we haven't got any more questions in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 15 minutes back of your time. I want to thank you all for attending. If you have got kind of any questions after this, then please do reach out to myself or Max. But I'm going to say thank you, and hopefully you will join us for a webinar very soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.